Hey, this is Jonathan from SyniteAudio, and today I'll be talking to you about MiniVerb, the delay reverb effect for Reaktor 6 and for Reaktor 6 blocks. So starting off, I've got my MS-20 coming in on this channel. We're going to bring the Reaktor 6 FX, throw that into the strip, wait for that to load up. So I've got in the zip file, I've got the Reaktor 6 blocks for MiniVerb, and I've got the ensemble set up. So we're going to be opening the ensemble in this case. Hit build. I'm going to go find my ensemble. Here it is. Alrighty. So to begin, I'm going to be playing around with some of the patches that are available in the MiniVerb ensemble, and then we'll start going into the controls, some use cases, and some cool stuff that you can do with it. So right off the bat, this is the initial preset. Alrighty. Next, let's look at some of the delays. So let's do a delay medium long. So this really exemplifies MiniVerb's delay mode, I guess you can say. It's not really a mode, it's more of a amount of smearing that occurs. Moving on, we've got let's see, let's do one of the rooms. Let's do a small room. So this is one of those things that are really cool because you can just increase the mix up to 100, and it kind of sounds like you're hearing this from either another room or it's like in the same room, but it's just dampened. It's kind of cool. It sounds like you're in that actual room and you're playing this through a speaker or something. That's always fun. Moving on, let's do one more. Let's see rubber, or yeah, rubber. And this is exemplifying some more extreme stuff that you can do with it with an insanely small size. Alrighty, so that was some of the presets. Let's go to the initial and start going from there. So starting from the leftmost column, we've got the pre-delay control. This is just like a pre-delay on any reverb/delay, so this spaces out when the effect will begin to sort of give a bit of room to either sort of give the illusion of increased space, or because you just want it to be more of like a slapback effect. If I go into a delay, bit of size, I can show it to you. Oh, actually, let's do more for reverb. So here you can see when I press the key, the reverb tail begins immediately. This can be spaced with the pre-delay from 0 to 100 milliseconds. So here it's like, but-z, but-z. That's because of the space of the pre-delay. That's when the reverb starts kicking in. Oh, you can hear it more with the actual delays. There's that dead space. So the initial, but, and then the delay comes in. It's worth noting all of these controls are CV controllables, so you can throw an LFO if you're running this in like blocks or something, other than a CC, using CC modulation or CC knob control. You can do CV modulation from the block inputs. So I have the CV inputs for the block, and then from there you can throw an LFO on, let's say, the pre-delay, and then you can use that for more of a chorusy sound. So that I was doing it by hand, but you can imagine with a bit of modulation, maybe not as much. You can really dial it in, the amount of modulation you want. Moving down, we've got the size control. So from 0 to 50, you've got your sort of basic stuff. So like a incredibly small room like the rubber, which is like insanely tiny, 0. And we get into tiny rooms, medium rooms, larger rooms, and then anything past 50 starts going into extreme territory, so you can get to really long delay times if you're using delays. All the way until some crazy stuff. Yeah, look how long that took to kick in. This is also really smoothly controlled. For some like really cool sound designy stuff that you can do with it. Moving down from there, we have the shape control. So this goes from a direct type of sound. I think all of these do have knob descriptions as well. So if I go to this I in Reaktor, hover over any control, and it'll tell you. However, so yeah, moving on. So the shape control is going from a 0 to 100 as well. This is from direct repetition to 100 being a more smeared reverb sound. I took off the modulation and feedback routing, so it's going to be mono. Below that, we've got the time control. So this controls the overall feedback amount of the reverb, going from an incredibly short amount of time to 100% feedback. You can pair that with the modulation and feedback routings to really create some endless sort of evolving tones and whatnot. Moving on from there, we have the sample rate control. So this is a variable sample rate or the internal variably. You can control the internal sample rate, variably. So if we're running at a sample rate of 44,100, at 100, we're running at that sample rate. And then when you go down, it'll decrease that. So it's like changing the tape speed on a tape machine. But of course digitally, so you get some nice artifacts out of that, which can be cool. And of course, just like a tape, anything recorded at a lower speed and played back at a higher speed will increase the pitch, and anything played back at or recorded at a higher speed, played back at a lower speed will create a lower pitch. Below the sample rate control, we have a modulation toggle switch. So this turns on move, as I called it, for moving the delay times and diffusion with LFOs, and that is controlled by the amount that pops up here. So that goes from 0 to 100. 25, it's set up in sets of quarters, so 0 to 25 is from 0 to 1 times modulation amount, then 25 to 50 is 2 times modulation amount, 50 to 75 is 3, and 75 to 100 is 4 times. So that can be shown by 0 modulation. So this is all small amounts. Then we go to the default of 25. Then we start getting way higher, all the way up to 4 times the initial modulation amount. So you can get some pretty cool stuff out of that as well. Below that is our feedback modes. So this is a toggleable selector. So you can go from off, which we are currently in, which makes it into mono mode. And when you have the modulation set to off and the feedback routing set to off, you essentially have 2 reverbs. This is because the left and right modes, or the left and right sections of the reverb, have no way whatsoever interaction with each other. So you can run a snare and a hi-hat on, like the snare on the left channel, hi-hat on the right channel, and they're going to go through their own reverbs and not interact whatsoever with each other if none of these are set up, which is kind of cool. It's very neat. I can exemplify that if I disconnect the left channel, even with a smear. It's only on the right channel, and if I do the same thing with the other channel, it only affects one side. So that's cool if you're using it in that sort of mixing sense. The EQ section will also affect both as well, since this is primarily a left-right stereo effect. Let me actually, did I hook that back? Okay, I did. Cool. Moving on, so the feedback modes, we've got off, which is mono. We've got cross feedback mode, which if there's anything on either channel that's not on the opposite channel, it'll ping pong back and forth. If you're running mono in to both channels, it won't do anything different. However, this is when, if you're running that snare hi-hat combination I was telling you about, then the snare and the hi-hat will, every time they go through the other delays, will swap back over. So if I show that off by disconnecting the left channel once again. You do get that sort of ping-pongy sound, starting with the channel that it goes into. Next, after that, we have circle feedback. So what this does is it's a feedback mode that I ended up coming up with a lot of playing around and toying with what you can do with delays and how they can route themselves. So what this will do, which is really cool, is it'll sort of create a circling sound that goes around your head. This is best exemplified if I do a large size, a good bit of time, and just press a key. Let me just listen to it. Kind of does some cool stuff. It's like a little wacky near the end of the tail there, but a good feedback mode. I really like it. You can get some really cool sounds with that, and modulation as well. But if you don't want to put any modulation and you just want stereo imaging from a mono source, circle feedback is pretty cool, especially with throwing in some smear, giving it some reverb. Moving on to the next column, we've got our CB toggle on the top. Below that is the mix control, which is just like a mix for any effect from completely completely dry to 100% wet. And this is useful if you want to create like really cool pads with MiniVerb, or if you're just using it as a send effect. And then of course if you're throwing it on an aux, you want to have 100% wet because you're already controlling the amount of send going into it. Below that we have the EQ section. So these are low and high shelves, where if you're increasing the low shelving amount, this is actually going to be acting as dampening. So you're going to dampen the low end. It's not a low cut, so it doesn't actually cut the frequencies. It just uses a low shelf to dampen the actual amplitude of those frequencies. Same thing for the high. Which is nice. It's a little more natural sounding in my ears because you're not like artificially scrapping the sounds. It's more the frequencies. It's more like you're using room materials to absorb the frequencies. And you can also use that in conjunction with the low for like radio band type of sounds, or where it's like coming out of a cheap crystal speaker or something. Especially with some delay. So that sort of classic radio sound that people like because it uses you're creating a bandpass in a sense. So below the amount control for the move, which appears and disappears when you toggle it, just for ease of use and visually, we have the multiplier. So what this does is essentially controls the amount of multiplication done on the internal delay times, which will either double the overall delay times or keeping that a singular 1 times. So for that, it's best exemplified when I'm playing. So if I play it a little bit. So this will double the times and lower the pitch, and kind of it's like playing pressing half speed on tape. So you can get some cool stuff out of that. And of course, same thing as the sample rate. Anything played back at a regular speed and halved will be lowered. Anything played back at the half speed and then increased will be higher pitched. So that's always fun to use, especially for different mixing applications and however you want to use it. Below that is the overall on-off of the effect. So this bypasses the mix control and will completely turn off or enable MiniVerb. is, you know, it's useful zone if you got like a setup, you've already got your mixing setup. And this is more in the blocks if you're using it as a block, because that way you can just quickly turn it on and off without changing your mix setting. And it's also usable in snapshots as well. So we've got all of the controls explained. So now I'm going to go and just play around a little bit and kind of create like a... let's go for like a nice large space where I can create a pad on my MS-20 and it'll really complement that. So this first thing, let's start at our initial preset. So we're going to want some more space on that, more shape. Okay. Let's increase the size. Start creating the pad on the MS-20, and then that way we can more or less complement the reverb for it. So I'm going to go for a triangle here. Oh, actually, already it sounds pretty good. Let's get some more, or actually, it's a little less modulation, and increase the time a little bit. Take some of those lows out, some of the highs. Increase the size a little bit more. Let's go for 100% mix, so we're just going to be hearing the reverb taking up a lot of space. So I swapped to a sawtooth there with some envelope modulation on the filter. And that really helps to create a really nice large space. So this has been MiniVerb. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see some more. I will have the links in the description for where you can grab MiniVerb, as well as some other links. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.